look like? What's the tile pattern on the walls? What's the general feel of the station? And we took that and stylized it into our game. Same with the above ground areas like Covent Garden Market, famous open air market. It's kind of a tourist spot now near the Opera House. We said, okay, that looks like a cool place to throw a boss into. So we picked a few landmarks just to get that sense of that you're in London without recreating it like a lot of racing games do. And that's a really impressive feat, but that takes a lot of manpower as well. And it really doesn't match the gameplay all the time. So if you have this street that's supposed to be half a kilometer long, and yet in the game pacing that's going to take an hour and a half to run through, it's like, well, let's just simulate that. Let's shorten it, take a couple key landmarks, and put it together. So that's what all the circles represent, the random areas. And those are areas that, if they're on the orange line, they're basically a tunnel, like a train tunnel. Now we have a few variations of train tunnels with like service yards and access ducts going into it. But what that first area is off town is one of usually three choices, different styles of tunnel. And then the other ones, the circles coming out from the hubs, can be, sometimes they're sewers, sometimes they're basements, sometimes they're city level. So we have a lot of options, and we, like I was saying before, I'll get to a spreadsheet a little later, but we control all that through the spreadsheets and dictate, okay, it's 80% of the time it's going to be a sewer with this choice of 5 out of 8 monster types. And then there's a 20% chance it's going to be basement level with these other types of monsters. So every time you go into, what do we have here, the Kingsway sewers, it's going to be sewers, but it's going to have, sometimes there's a large open sewer, like a Victorian style. Sometimes it's going to be a narrow, twisty, windy, looping background style. So this one you end up, as we found with Diablo, people end up replaying our games over and over again, and they go through the storyline again. So that's what we don't spend a whole lot of time trying to come up with the cleverest story in the world. We just kind of make it simple, good, evil, go kill bad guy. But it makes it fun because you pay attention to the story once, and then as you're replaying it, you're finding better stuff and building your character and trying different sets. You're getting a different experience from the actual world itself. Since we didn't have time to write 20 different scripts, it almost becomes irrelevant. It adds spice. So it's our story guys wouldn't want to hear me say that, but that's the fact of it. Just go through and see the same story, but experience it in a much different way. Let's move off this one. Now this is our DRLG system. It was originally named after Dave Breivik, the founder of Blizzard North and creator of Diablo, but saying Dave's random level generation started getting people confused with me. So we changed it to dynamic. Sounds cooler anyway, like a real acronym. And so, like I said, going back, we based it out. We knew how those systems work. We just wanted to simplify it so we could get more variety and have it more controlled by the artists and level designers and not as much on the programmer time. We had to come up with new ways to create the individual tiles. Because what we end up with tile sets. And so we have a sewer tile set and a city tile set and a parks tile set. And those are all just pieces that fit together like Legos and they interchange. And some have to match up with 3 pieces around, some all the way around, some just on an end. Almost any idea can work with that. They just have to seam up properly. Like the city pieces are all 4-sided rooms that match up on all 4 sides, and it grids out, and then it follows the streets where the sewers kind of snap end to end like tubes. So there's a lot of variety there. The way we accomplish that is we decided to use groups within 3D Studio. 3ds Max as it's called now. And within those groups we have a bunch of different components, and the components consist of the visible meshes, what you see in game, and that's the pretty stuff. The collision mesh is a separate mesh, far lower poly, because being a client-server model for our online play really restricts how much processing power we can put on the server. This was another compromise of what we wanted the Diablo experience of going online and hooking up with people through a BattleNet-ish sort of scenario. Not full-on massive multiplayer, but enough of those elements that people would develop communities and keep playing for a long time. So with that, we needed a very simple collision. And then off that collision, we would generate path nodes so that it really further simplifies what the AI has to run for all the monsters. When you get 40 monsters on screen and all of them trying to move around, you can't be doing real-time collision on everything, or at least we didn't want to. And it just made it simpler. And it required a little processing, so we made a separate mesh for that. And clip planes, originally clip planes would do like they would sound they do. They clipped out other rooms, kind of an octree, kind of portal scenario, which worked great for us indoor, but then we found out outdoor, on a grid like that, every room had 4 clip planes, and you could pretty much see across the whole road because it never stopped. So outside, the functionality that changed, and this goes into iteration, and we just found things that worked and things that didn't, and then we could just add a little bit more on top of it to solve those problems. And for the outdoor world, the problems at the end of the list there, the occluders. And occluders are just an even more simple geometry than the collision meshes. And what that did is if you had a building and it was solid, and then we put a plane behind it and said this occludes anything behind it. So it's kind of the opposite approach to culling out distance geometry. And then the origin just centered the room, so relative to everything else. So each room had, and we did these with actual meshes, because we could have taken the center point and relocated it, but then you'd have to open up the geometry and dig down into the data and offset things. And that, if it's invisible, a lot of times it gets screwed up, and then you spend days trying to debug something and then realize, oh, it was this piece. So we wanted all these things, and so we just created little textures and a simple 2-poly square and placed it where we wanted the origin, so it was consistent over all the rooms. And I'll show you some visible examples here in a minute, how that worked. And then the icons, so we preview levels. So a lot of those, we just call those debug textures. Okay, so here's a little clip of the gameplay itself, so you can get a feel for. Here we go. But this I just screen captured last week off our live game, so that you see other people running around. Little choppy being compressed into this video, but character select screen, go in, typical, we got 6 character classes, customized face, hair color, that sort of thing. Pretty standard stuff. Jump in, the first thing you do is find your way to this station. It's a little dark, but station is for service towns, and so you see the other people, then each level spawns off as its own instance. So if you party up, you can take your party with you. If not, you just go into your own instance. You don't have to worry about people killing all your monsters, stealing your loot, and things like that. But you can auto party so that if somebody happens to be in there, you just run into them. There's a lot of individual choice built in. Item, weapon mods, big inventory, lots of possibilities there. You'll run out into one of the first areas. And this one's a randomized city level. So you jump out of the station, come up out of the broken subway. And what we have here, all the streets and buildings are separate elements. We call them rooms. And they stack together based on rule sets. So the street could turn left, turn right, could go up, down, any which way. Even the atmosphere level is a random choice. It could be gray and falling, it could be dark and raining, it might be on fire. Because that's a separate lighting system. So we reuse a lot of the same buildings. Much like the story, you don't need to see 100 variations of a brick building. A couple will suffice, and therefore you just go on the streets killing things. So we didn't get too crazy with trying to make everything totally different and added elements on top, layered on into the street. Instead of building the cars and barricades into the model itself, we did what we call layouts, where we take the base room, which is an empty street, and then add cars on top of it, and then we can do as many layouts as we want. And we constantly update and change that, so which we're doing with ongoing content. So we just recently had Halloween content. You go in and find extra stuff. For Christmas, we'll put up lights and stations, things like that. Those are all just layout elements, and we can change very rapidly. It's a spreadsheet change. It's kind of nice. Okay, so here's what the level looks like iconically. And this is just another mesh with a simple texture on it that we built into the room group file, so that when we go into our tool, we can quickly preview it without all the root geometry. And then we can cycle tab through it and see what the rules are generating. If it's broken, we can get the seed number, which is this long string down in the corner here, say exactly, because we can replicate anything based off the seed number. So if you're in game and you see a building that's floating off in space in a bug situation, you can call it the seed and go in here and we can figure out why that happened. Now those buildings floating off in space are supposed to be there because they're background out. Run through a short video of how it works. You can spin it, rotate it, and white strip is the road, and the blue ones are buildings.